We have been speaking about humility as it is mentioned and required from the scriptures for all those who walk pleasing to the Lord. Good morning. I'm Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisseton, Illinois, with your thoughts for Friday. You know, there are references in Jesus' teaching. There are admonitions to the church and to believers in all the epistles that Paul wrote. But it's not only those New Testament references that talk about humility. In Micah chapter 6 and verse 8, he says, "He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God." Now, first of all, we are given the requirements for what God calls good in our lives. He begins this phrase by saying, "He has told you, O man, what is good." So we should not think that this is the first time humility is ever mentioned in the scriptures. We've not only heard his commands, we've also seen humility exhibited in many of his Old Testament followers. And now he is telling us, what does the Lord require of you? So we are not considering suggestions here for a better life. We're not looking at recommendations or even some tiny insinuations that these traits might be good for one to follow in their life. He is saying that these three things are required of you by your heavenly Father. He starts out, first of all, by saying we are called to do justice, which means to live righteously, to be honest, and certainly have a high degree of integrity in our life among others around us. We should always be fair in our dealings with those others and seek to treat them right. Secondly, we are to love kindness. Now, this is not just doing some kind deeds because it's required of us and we're commanded to live this way in a community setting. No, when we love kindness, we enjoy showing sympathy to others or compassion or even benevolence to others around us. We're thoughtful, we're considerate toward them. This should be something that comes naturally. It is not a forced action. He said, I want you to love kindness. And finally, he calls for us to walk humbly with our God. And notice the implication here is a daily walk, not a one-time act of humility or some modest step that we took in life. We know the Christian's walk, by the way, encompasses everything, even from the way that they talk or the places they go, the way that they treat others, and certainly the way that they act before God. Here he is calling for us to practice what that walk before God actually looks like in all humility. Now, it is no easy task sometimes because, sometimes we become arrogant. We're thinking that we're better than others. And even when we're acting as believers, we may tend to compare ourselves with the lowest common denominator among Christians to maybe build ourselves up. But he is requiring here for believers to walk and spend each moment of every day in a spirit of humility. And especially when we realize that God sees everything we do and think anyway. This should be a motivation for us to be able to walk humbly before our God.